Hi Terry, this is Rhonda. I wanted to create this very short video for you to give you an idea of what we might hope to see during the interviews. So what I've done is I have the video set to start with the email message that Tammy sent. Of course, I think the student or the interviewee will probably just have this on their screen when they get started. So this is the document. I've got two screens, so I'm going to drag it over here back to where you can see it. And so I'll begin the presentation as such. Hello committee, thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm going to be discussing the value of using dot leaders for a visual effect for an audience that will be looking at an agenda. As you can see on the left hand side, we have raw copy or text that's been provided. And on the right side of the screen, we see a formatted agenda. I am going to be demonstrating for you today how to format this text such that it looks like this. And the value of doing that is an improved visual for the audience or the reader of the document. Whereas this can look rather jumbled and confusing, this kind of cleans it up for the audience and lets them see clearly who will be presenting each item of this agenda. So let's get started. I'm going to begin by removing all of the unnecessary text on this page. Now, most documents start at about the 2-inch margin from the top. And so you can see that this ruler on the left gives us a guide to where that 2 inches would be. So maybe about right here. Okay, and you'll notice I do have the ruler turned on above. I achieved that by clicking the View tab at the top on the ribbon, and there's a toggle switch in the Show grouping for ruler. You can click the ruler on or off. Okay, so I'm going to first of all highlight the heading. Notice that the heading is above the body of the agenda, and so I'll highlight these 3 lines, and under the Home tab I will center these 3 lines. And look what's happened. That first line has decided to be part of that. So I'm going to back up, and before we do those 3 lines, I'm going to separate these lines from the body so that the body doesn't get the wrong idea and try to follow suit with the heading. Here we go. So, and just for effect, I really think it might be nice to maybe bold that first line. So now that they're centered, that's great. Notice that there's also spacing between each line. So we can achieve that a couple of ways, but I'm just going to go simple and put a line between each item. Now, I'm going to set dot leaders. These are called dot leaders over here. And the reason they call them dot leaders is because they lead the eye from the source over to the next item you want the eye to follow to. So in this case, we want the item in the agenda to be presented. We want this person's eye to follow to the right and see who will be presenting this item in the agenda. So let's highlight the entire agenda. And then notice on the ruler, there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to be choosing the ruler method. And notice that this right tab has already been set. I've done that in advance, but we can maybe start from scratch here and see that there are no tabs set here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the text. And notice I can do this a few ways. I'm going to double click on the ruler at 6. That's going to open, by double clicking here at the bottom of the ruler, it's going to open the tabs dialog box. Now I can set everything in this box. I'm going to say I want a right tab, which is going to turn this tab into something like a backwards L. I'll show you that when we're finished. And I'm going to choose the leader of my choice. Now, dot leader has been used over here in the sample, and so we'll choose number 2 to mimic that. And then say OK. Notice now on the ruler that this looks like a backwards L. Now I could have chosen this in advance from this selection over here. This is the tab selector, and I could have just cycled through each one of these types of tabs until I got to the right tab, which again is that backwards L. But I chose to do it on the ruler using that tabs dialog box. Okay, now remember that I had to highlight all text in order to apply that tab to everything. The long way to do that would have been maybe just do line by line, but this is a much faster way to do it. Now, this is quite simple. In fact, it looks almost like magic. I will just place my cursor in the front of each of the names on each line and hit the tab key one time. That will send the name to the right side of the page and evenly align the last letter of the name with this 6. I'll go ahead and press this so you can see in a moment a guide, invisible guide. Nobody could see it if it printed, but you could see it. If I click here, you'll see that a vertical guide appears, and each of the last letters of each name is evenly aligned so that everything lands exactly where it should land on the right side of the page. Now there's nothing over here to send, but here in this sub bullet we have something here. Okay, now it's quite similar to what we have over here, but there is some line spacing that's been applied to each of these, and I think that would appear as an improvement here as well. So let's highlight each one of these. We can go to the Home tab, and under the paragraph grouping, let's open that up to the spacing section, and I will apply line spacing. We can experiment a little bit, but maybe we just start with something like a 1.5 lines and then say OK. Now, your end product should have line spacing that looks fairly even throughout the body, line spacing at the top, and we should have an even amount of white space at the top and bottom of the document. Now, what I like to do sometimes is just do a quick print preview. I'm not going to print the document, but just to have a look at the document to see. Now this is just a picture that's been provided, but this is an actual documented text. I believe we have a fair amount of white space at the top and bottom of the document, and that everything has been formatted as requested. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.